All right, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual roundtable on marketing and communication approaches. My name is Spencer Giese. I'm a research education specialist at ACUHO, and it is my true privilege today to join you all again. We've got a great list of attendees that is currently filing into our session. And we're really excited to bring you this topic that's very salient. Judging by those who have signed up for this and are excited to attend, we know this is a topic that you are here to listen more about and learn more about, and really what we get out of today's session will be based on your interaction as well as our co-facilitators. So really, let's talk about how we've been handling all this in terms of marketing communication approaches on campus. Before we get started, I do want to always point back to our ACUHO resources that you can find online. We've got a variety of YouTube recordings on our YouTube channel from previous virtual roundtables. We've got our ACUHO online community threads that are dedicated to COVID-19 response, and also other topics that may be coming up as you're planning for the future that may not be COVID-19 related. We'd love to have you post there. And then we also have a dedicated COVID-19 resources page on our ACUHO website. I am joined by three outstanding co-facilitators today that we're going to get to know a little bit more soon. So thrilled they're here with us. But really, the key component of today's session is you, the attendee, and how you're going to interact with us, how you're going to have your voice heard, and you're going to help, how we can have you help drive the conversation today. So on your Zoom menu, you should see a few things. You should see a Q&A button. That's where we're going to ask that you put your questions and your comments that you'd like us to cover in today's session. We'll go for about an hour. This is being recorded. This will be put on our YouTube channel. So if you have to duck out early, you're able to finish viewing that. We will also send out a summary to attendees after our session. When you're submitting a question or comment in the Q&A tab, if you could submit your name, position, institution, just so we can better connect with you. As you pose questions, your questions can be answered or commented on by other people in the session. Everyone can see the questions, everyone can see the comments. So let's help each other out. If you have an answer or you have an approach to share with someone who has a question, please feel free to jump in there. Also, if you see a question you really want answered, there is the like function. Basically, that upvotes it and helps us see as a panel that, hey, that's a question that our audience really wants to hear answered. Other than that, just to make sure everything's working well, you should also see a raised hand function. So if you're seeing a PowerPoint deck, if you're seeing webcam pictures of our co-facilitators and you're hearing this presentation, if you could just raise your hand to make sure that our audio and visual is coming through loud and clear. All right, great, lots of raised hands. Glad to hear that. Also, we will use that raised hand function later as we go through some topics. That's also a great time that if we're talking about a topic and I see you raise a hand as a moderator today, I will say, oh, that person raised their hand. I bet they want to talk about this some more. We may call upon you if you raise your hand on a topic to add to that. So be aware if you want to chime in. We're happy to unmute some folks in the audience and have you connect with our group. All right, so there's our ground rules. There's our layout for the day. Really, let's jump into our content for today. So I would just like each of our co-facilitators to take some time to introduce themselves, what their role at their university consists of, and just, you know, what has their approach been? What have they really experienced over this whirlwind of the last month? So, Meg, I'm going to have you start us out.
Hey everyone, my name is Megan Jagnow. I work as the manager for marketing and communications at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. My role specifically serves all of the departments within student life. So university housing is definitely one of the offices I work with, and they were a key component as our campus was responding to COVID-19 this year. What our campus is experiencing, we had the opportunity to be able, like, our spring break fell right as the beginning of we were making some of these decisions. We had our spring break during March 16th. That was the week that our campus made the decision to transition to completely online. One of the things that I think was a really great decision on behalf of our chancellor and our emergency management team, is that they set up an emergency operations center in our student union immediately. And so there was a EOC, or Emergency Operations Center. There was also a JIC where I was housed, and that was our Joint Information Center. And then there was the policy group that consisted of the chancellor and her cabinet. And we were all in the same space. And so every day while we were making a lot of these key decisions, I was interacting with the key decision makers. I was interacting with the policy group, and the university housing was as well. It really helped to, I think, identify issues quickly, to respond to feedback quickly. It's really neat at a land grant public institution to be on a minute-by-minute conversation basis with your chancellor, and to know that not only does she know my name, but she knew my role and how I was assisting in the process. And so she was just so great, and the leadership there was great. We very specifically focused on messaging from housing, and that was all of the messaging there was functioning and approved out of that policy group. So the chancellor got to see every single message that we crafted for the university housing office. And we tried to segment as much as possible. That was one of our big key strategies, was to try to meet every student where they were at, especially since a lot of them were getting this news while they were vacationing down in Florida. And so they didn't plan, they didn't have a chance to pack and to prepare for something like this. And so we really prioritized frequent communication, segmented communication. We also worked really closely with our dean of students and with our chancellor to provide a lot of video content that focused in on just taking care, understanding and recognizing that this was really stressful, that we were stressed, that they were stressed, and that we were doing everything that we possibly could to be able to help them. And that was a consistent theme. As frustration came through, and as we had questions, we tried to answer them frequently and honestly. Our chancellor held town hall meetings virtually with both faculty and with students and staff. And so it was one of those things that, like, that multi-tiered approach was great. But ultimately, right now, we had started at that point, we'd started a checkout process where students were able to come back and pick up their stuff in a very organized, appointment-based model. And unfortunately, we had to pause that midway through. So that's where we're at right now, currently paused. We're making plans to open that back up soon once the stay-at-home ordinances are lifted for the state of Tennessee. And wanting to make sure that not only are we allowing the opportunity for our students to be able to come back and get their belongings, but we're doing that in a very safe way and trying to prioritize their safety and the safety of the Knoxville community with that, because obviously as you have people there coming in, it puts folks in the community at risk. And so we want to make sure that we're being very cautious with that as well. So that's the current status here at UT.
Thanks, Megan. Mike.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mike Piacentino. I'm the manager for Marketing, Communications, and Development. I serve our Division of Student Affairs as a whole, very similar to Megan in that regard, at the University of Miami in Florida. So Megan, we probably had a lot of your students down in our area for their spring break. So much like UT Knoxville, we too were just in the midst of our spring break. And when all of the decisions were made to begin closing our residence halls, the stay-at-home orders, and all those sorts of things were done. For anybody that's been following Florida news, which is always interesting to follow, you could have seen perhaps that our state was very much decentralized. So it was very much a county by county, even as so far, if you're familiar with Dade County, Florida, went city by city. So it was literally, some of those orders were dependent upon what side of the street you were on. And so our university had to really carefully monitor sort of exactly what was going on. Things that affected our off-campus students were different than those that may have affected our on-campus students based solely on the zip code that they were located in. So we had to be very careful and very intentional about, as we were deciphering some of these state, county, and city level ordinances, we had to be very careful to sort of translate them for students, sometimes both literally into different languages as well as figuratively, kind of help them understand, okay, the city of Miami has this ordinance, but our city, where our university is located, is actually the city of Coral Gables. So that's a different mayor, that's a whole different governing body there. So we just had to kind of make sure that we were even ourselves clear when we would see these things come out, sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night. We would sometimes rush to do all these things and then say, oh, wait a second, that was this mayor, not our mayor. So we had to be very clear about that. And then overall, so right now where we're at, to kind of give you just the overview from a housing perspective, because many of our students were on spring break when we sort of made that call, we right now have a little over, I believe the number is still about 2,000 plus residents, which is about 50% of our on-campus population that still have belongings in their room that sort of just, they left them as they were and have not been able to return to campus to retrieve those items thus far. Thankfully, we were in a stay-at-home, thankfully I should say, we're in a stay-at-home where we never had to even think about starting that process. We sort of just told everyone, if you're off campus now, you cannot return until a later date. And that's sort of where we're left for now. We don't know what that date is yet, obviously, as this continues to unfold, but we still have about 2,000 plus residents that we know at some point are gonna need to come back. We are considering and are definitely exploring options to work with third-party vendors who can work with students to come in and remove their items, which is not typically in our housing processes. We wouldn't allow a vendor to come in without a student being there, but desperate times call for some creativity. So we're certainly working on what students' options may be to have, whether it's family members or shipping moving companies come in and help students remove their items for them, again, once it's safe to do so. And then in general, sort of across campus, again, with my role being at the division level, the theme of the last month has really been about coordination and collaboration. When this first all started, which maybe was what, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, depending upon where you want to start the timeline, there seemed to be this need where all of these different units and all these divisions kind of felt the need to communicate with their groups, whether it was an academic unit, whether it was a student life unit, all these different services. Everybody all of a sudden said, well, we got to send something to students to let them know what we're doing. And we sort of really had to work with units to kind of rein that back a little bit because all of these were very well-intentioned, very supportive, very caring message, but what started out as supportive messaging just quickly became, almost more anxiety driven in the minds of our students as they were getting floods of emails from all these different groups saying, we care about you, we support you. Well, sometimes showing your support is just staying low for a little bit. So right now, what we're actually doing is across the entire university, if you are sending any message, whether it be video or written, to students, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, any group of more than 50 people, that all has to be coordinated through our central communications office. And then they work closely with folks like me to sort of figure out, is the timing right? Is the message right? Maybe, okay, can you send this tomorrow because we're doing this today? And that has been really smooth and has really kind of helped smooth out some of those moments where we may look like we were tripping over ourselves because everybody was just trying to get the word out. And now we've really looked at it from a very, very intentional, very strategic lens. So that's been a huge help now that we're much more coordinated. I think that's sort of a good place to kind of leave it of where we are today. From a housing perspective, just like everybody else, we're probably in a sit and wait. We do have about 250 students that did remain on campus due to their extenuating circumstances. And then, like I said, we have about 2,000 plus that we need to bring back on at some point to help them get their belongings out.
Thanks for sharing, Mike. Paul.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Mendoza. I am a graphic designer and copywriter at UCLA Residential Life. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. And if I've met you before in person at one of the previous ACUHO Business Operations conferences, it's good to see you again, your name in the credits, at least virtually. So let's talk about timeline, right? Okay, so the first email that we received campus-wide that started all of our COVID-19 operations changes was March 2nd. And that was an early heads up from our chancellor. The one thing that really marked a change for us in the way that marketing and communications was handled on behalf of housing and residential life was how centralized it all was. We have a new vice chancellor of strategic communications who joined the university back in October of 2019. So, excellent timing, Miss Mary Osako. What a wonderful time to join us. So as in that new role, once the COVID-19 situations were emerging in other cities and we could see it moving down the state and we could see a lot of state and federal things changing, the Office of Strategic Communications held daily meetings, daily briefings, and every single piece of our communications had to be discussed and reviewed and face a level of scrutiny that we hadn't had to before. Up until that point, UCLA as an institution is so large, there would be no way to maintain that sort of oversight. But in this case, a lot of different teams came together in a way that I think was really great for our communities, for our students, for our faculties to be very sensitive and particularly mindful of what we say and how we write. And even in that case, my title is copywriter, but I believe there was Stratcom support for the copywriting, even for messages that went directly to a housing team. So I think it was great to see a lot of different communications teams from all over the university come together and to have a seat at that table. Now, to clarify, these are things that I am simply observing. There is a creative director in housing administration. I report to a director of organizational development, and those are the folks who are sitting on those committees and on those teams. So it's a lot of what my responsibility is throughout this process is to execute orders as planned, and then also find some innovative solutions to speak to our core competencies as a student-driven design and communications team and a design team. And I'll speak more on that later, to have parity one-to-one with the material that's been shared by Meg and Mike, and yay, Meg and Mike. The way that we handled our move-out communications was because we're on quarter system, a lot of what we would need to do would coincide with spring break. So essentially our move-out procedures that we would normally say for the end of spring quarter were advanced one full quarter, so that students were invited largely through email communications to register their intentions through our online housing portal on our website on moving out, and then also receiving a partial refund if they decided not to stay. We normally have 14,000 beds right around there in our on-campus housing communities called The Hill. We are now down to, I think, around 700 as of this week. We were anticipating a handful of folks who wanted to stay on. For many of our residents, it's actually a safer and better place for them to be academically successful than it is for them to return to their homes. Since we are a state institution, our facilities continue to stay open even during the mandate to work from home. And that's to be in line with our requirements as a state. So in how we reach out to those residents and the ones that we reach abroad, we'll go into this into greater detail later in the call. But we have lots of different teams offering different stuff. So our programming units in residential life have converted a lot of their programming into Zoom webinars and meetings, much like this one. Their main portal for communicating that programming is a new addition to our website. Finally, we have an events page that we were kind of sitting on for a while. We had used our Welcome Week Trooper and Welcome module as like the guinea pig for that, just to see, okay, well, here's how this would work just for this like week and a half of events. And we were like, okay, we're gonna work on the solution, we're gonna sit on it, and then we're just gonna wait for the right time to launch it. And the right time is now. So that is an events page that we've now added. And on the social media side, my colleagues Ricky Horn and Terry Yang manage the students who run that social media team. And they shifted their content to be more of like a daily check-in, right? There's like themed days. So to engage not only students who have moved off, but have been followers of the channel, but also to engage perspectives, because this all also coincides with the fact that we just accepted a bunch of incoming first years on March 20th, right in the middle of all of this. And then for my team's part, I'll have some say over the website, some say over social content, but to get back to the centralized nature of it, like a lot of the stuff that my team and I are making is intended to serve like the entire university. So now I'm talking to the college, I'm talking to alumni, I'm talking to Stratcom, because together we're all trying to figure out like the best way to reach out to our people and to remind folks that there is still value in being part of our community, that no matter where you are, that you're still a Bruin. And yeah, and that brings us to present day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. So Megan, Mike, Paul, thank you for giving that kind of brief overview of some of the approaches you've had on campus, what you've experienced so far. And really, I want to put it out there to the group now. We've got, a great amount of attendees on this. We've got about 100 on the call today. And really, this is your chance. I'd love to have some folks hop on that Q&A tab and start submitting some of those questions. What are the topics you're wondering about? What's something that I have to imagine a lot of something about future approaches. What's next? We've talked a lot about what we've done so far, but what are those next waves of communication that we need to have go out, whether it's regarding summer, fall, or just current days. So please feel free to start entering some items into the Q&A chat. Yeah, and I know before we came on, we had a number of topics that our panelists had put in. So first of all, let's talk about speed of communication. Obviously, it's been a pretty tense situation the past month. What messages did, this is for our co-facilitators, what messages did you feel like came out too fast? What messaging did you think might have been too slow? What might have been just right? I feel like this is the story of the three bears maybe. Too fast, too slow, and this one's just right. So Goldilocks, that's right. Made it into a virtual roundtable. So if you've got any examples of that on your campus you'd be willing to share, I'd love to hear those.
Mike, go. You should go.
So I'll go. All right. So I don't have a specific answer of what were some things that went out too fast, too slow, or just right. I mean, I could probably go back and think about some of them. But what we sort of found ourselves in was sometimes we were communicating, or we were working on communicating. We were drafting the emails or the social media content or the video script before we really had a clear understanding of what the decision or policies actually were. So there were kind of two of these conversations going on at tandem, where half of us were sort of doing some of that wordsmithing, some of that clarity, some of that piece. And then we would send a draft off to the other half, and they would say, well, wait, we changed our mind. We're now going to do it this way. And so then we had to kind of go back and re-edit. So once we started seeing that happen a few too many times for our liking, we really made sure that we as the communications folks really had a clear understanding from the decision makers what their decisions actually were. And it seems sort of, well, no duh, but it kind of in this moment where you're just sort of, everyone's in that rush to get things out, get the website updated, get that email out because things were happening so quickly. We again sometimes found ourselves in a mode where we were sort of putting that cart before the horse and working on the email before the decision group had even clearly sort of worked through the whole process in their head. So I would say it's sort of, to me, that was kind of the ones where we had wished, we had to send out a clarifying email, or we had to sort of take a step back and say, oh, wait, we thought these two systems talk to each other. Now we realize they don't. So now we have to figure out a new process, and now we have to communicate that new process over again. So I think for what we sort of learned and what we would say about what went out too fast was some of those emails that maybe made our lives more difficult because we communicated something that maybe wasn't the best process for doing it because we hadn't fully thought through the process entirely.
Thanks, Mike. Other examples, Paul or Megan, on too fast, too slow, just right, that you might have off the top of your head?
Yeah, I checked in with all of my marketing and communications colleagues in different departments. And to echo some of Mike's insights is, sometimes, like, even with all of the daily meetings that we're having, a decision will come down and we're like, wait, you can't, oh my God. So for example, there was the decision to go online, like fully online with all of our instruction for spring quarter, went down on April 10th. We had no idea. And so we had like 4 hours to figure out what to say. And so that was, we would, I think the move towards centralized communications is great, but and inevitably, I think we're all trying our best. I think that's really the nice thing about this point in time with where we're at is there's a lot of empathy in the space right now. Like even when you're on a Zoom channel, communication every day, if there's like a cutout on the Wi-Fi or someone is running a little bit behind, it's like, we get it, we understand, you're at home with your kids. But yeah, that was one example of something that we had to respond to pretty eminently. And we, the fact that we were able to get things like together with Stratcom relatively quickly was good, but that's what it takes in order to get things fast, that you need that leadership right at the top. We were we were very like, one of our main concerns was whether or not there'd be like an emergent like infection situation in the housing community. So we got that protocol together pretty quickly, but then we ended up not having to roll it out as intensely as we thought, which is kind of a good thing, you know? So to have over prepared, I think was nice for us. So we moved it out very quick, but then we're like, oh, maybe if we didn't have to use it, great. Yeah, the consolidation plan for us. So the story of moving from 14,000 beds to 700, to figure out what that plan was, which buildings were going where, which dining halls are going to be live, that took a long time. And a lot of it we couldn't control. But as a result of taking a long time to make that final decision, what it ended up happening at the end was that students had not as much time as I think we would have liked to give them in order to make the right decision for themselves on whether they wanted to stay or go. Because it would be one thing to say, oh, I'd love to stay as long as I get to keep my room. Or versus, oh, I would love to stay, but then I have to like move my room and then, live with someone else. Or, you know, like we weren't able to kind of give them that full package, I think, as quickly as we liked. And also like what they get to keep in the rooms and how people leave, it was hit or miss. And we definitely saw that pop up on the memes pages when people were like, oh, I can't believe they only give us this much time to move out. Otherwise, it was said in an email that we couldn't keep our stuff. So, yeah, I mean, everyone's trying their best. I think there's a lot of patience around, but there's definitely timing stuff that we could work on.
I think you bring up a good point. I mean, I think as humans, we're doing a better job of showing latitude in terms of even like the work style and workflow. I saw Haley Harrington Thomas raised their hand. So Haley, if you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself to the group. Or maybe Haley is on.
Hi there, sorry.
You're okay.
I was moving some stuff around and accidentally raised my hand, but if you want, I can give a little bit of intro of what we've been doing. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Happy accidents. Let's go for it.
So I am the marketing and communications coordinator for Yates Fieldhouse, which is the campus recreation facility for Georgetown University. We have been closed as a facility for about just under 40 days now. And we very quickly transitioned to a virtual environment. We offer at least 4 group fitness classes a week online that are accessible on all of our social media platforms as well as our website. We've started esports from scratch to try and reach out to another branch of our students. What else? We have we have been working on issuing refunds to our members for the month of March and suspended all memberships until we reopen again. So a lot of it has just been keeping us on our toes, and we've been working to make sure that everyone has the correct information. We provided a frequently asked questions page on our website that we update very regularly when we get new information, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback as to, you know, people are staying in the know, and we're just trying to fill in the gaps where we can.
Thanks, Haley. Appreciate you sharing that. Certainly, as a sports fan, I have to imagine esports is going to just explode right now. I found myself the last couple of weeks. I need some sports entertainment. I've watched esports because it's actually live and happening. So, thanks for sharing that. I think one of the big questions we're seeing is refunds. So, panelists, could you kind of share what's your messaging been about refunds, and how are you answering those questions that are really hard that are coming in, or maybe unhappy people reaching out?
So the University of Tennessee actually have already issued all of their refunds, so that process is complete for us. We decided to have all of that process centralized to our one-stop center that handles all of our financial payments, financial aid, all of that, and housing was absolutely rolled into that. And so we informed folks early and often in almost every single communication piece that information about refunds was definitely something that we really cared about, but that we were waiting on guidance from the Department of Education and the state of Tennessee to make sure that we were making the best decisions for them and for our campus. One of the other messages, we were really transparent with students and letting them know that, hey, like if you get a refund, we need to be really cautious in how we go about that because it could impact your financial aid and your scholarships. And we want to make sure that we're doing that in the best way possible to where you, your financial situation personally isn't impacted. And so one of the things that we did while we were waiting for those decisions to be made was to announce an emergency needs fund through our Dean of Students office. And so that was an opportunity where we did a lot of fundraising. I think a lot of campuses done this, where we did a lot of fundraising around being able to provide just some basic needs, emergency funding, and for, resources for students. And we were able to talk about that, this is something that's happening. We recognize that refunds are a really big deal right now. We're working on it. We promise we will let you know as soon as possible. And the second we had an idea of what that date was, or like the date range, we would let folks know when that was happening. It took a little bit for all of our refunds to be fully executed, several days, but we have an amazing team here that just really worked very, very hard to make sure that that all happened. And just having that process centralized, it also centralized questions for it as well. And so we worked really closely with our help desk to make sure that they had all of the information that they needed from University Housing to be able to answer those questions for folks. We consolidated all of our FAQs about it into one space for campus. And so that was one of the things I think that we did really well. Instead of having FAQs and people answering phones, et cetera, like all over campus, we published one number to call, one website to go to. That was it. And we kind of locked down everything else. And so that ended up being a really big part of my role, was to inform those central areas and making sure that those central locations for information had the right information at any given point in time. So that was how we did it. I'm really proud of how quickly we were able to get that done. And the students seem like they are in a pretty good spot. We heard a lot about refunds initially, but then it immediately almost went into whether or not the students were going to go into a pass-fail kind of a model. So the refunds really didn't end up taking up too much airspace for us. So we were really fortunate. I think it's because we acted quickly, we were honest, we were transparent, we explained if it wasn't happening as fast as what a student needed it to happen, we told them why. And that, I think that authenticity went a long way with our student body, and it's gone really well overall.
Thanks, Meg. Let's talk about maintaining positivity. I think there's a great question that just came up. What are y'all doing in your roles to maintain positivity, whether it's answering the questions that are coming in or just the kind of constant stream of demands and stress that might be coming into your positions? What are you doing for yourselves? How are you maintaining?
Oh, Spencer, I'm so glad you asked. So my team is I manage a team of 5 students. We are called Double Major. We are the Design and Communications team, hence the name. I have put a link to our Instagram page so you can see more about us. So we generally work on major campaigns that affect the entire campus, or the Hill at the very least. So our Welcome Week, Geek Week, we have a touch on TEDx UCLA, which won an ACUHO Marketing Award a couple years ago. We launched Bruins Vote during primary season, just prior to all of this. So of course, with everybody working from home, like, it really changed the scope of our work a little bit, because then we're like, are we even having a Welcome Week? So what my team's approach was, the direction that I had set for them was, how do we bring joy into a lot of these proceedings with the way that we are interfacing with products digitally, and how that can speak to our core competencies of what we're good at doing. So visual design, website design, motion design, interaction design, all that stuff. So as I click around, one of the products that we offered were these virtual backgrounds. So we did, and a lot of folks are making virtual backgrounds for Zoom. It's a lot of photography, it's a lot of illustration and still image, but the one kind of killer feature that we have for our team is that we like to make things move. So we made a series of motion backgrounds, and we essentially partnered with alumni and strategic communications to amplify the message so that it wasn't just focused on the housing community. We thought that, okay, if we made content that was good for alumni, that was good for our pro staff and faculty, then we all get to feel like we're part of the same thing. This was shared, this particular asset designed by Ansley Douglas, class of 22, was shared on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter for the main UCLA account. You know, a little over 1,000 likes in 5 days. Not bad, not bad. And then additionally, one way that we wanted to approach the product was to see how we can combine different services together. What I'm about to show you is only functional within a few versions of Zoom from 4.6.4 to 4.6.8. But in previous versions, you were able to integrate Snap Camera and use essentially any Snapchat feature or lens that you want on streaming platforms like Zoom. It was originally designed for Twitch, but it should work with any streaming platform if you have the right version. So when we made the backgrounds, we made the lenses to go with it. And then that way it's like, okay, it's actually a really stellar portfolio piece for them. I think it's good experiences for the university. And so that's kind of one example of the way that we decided to bring like joy to the proceedings.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. Love that. I'm going to have to talk to you about those backgrounds. I'm looking for something that moves. So. Mike, Megan, I know you've got to be doing something.
So go ahead, Megan. It's inevitable. Go ahead, Megan. Oh, all right, I'll take it. Okay. So for us, similar to Paul, I supervise a team of 6 undergraduate students who make up our writers, our designers, photo, video team, and all of that. And what we did, and my colleague who as part of my team as well, we talked to our students and we kind of asked them, like, what did they want to do, right? I mean, we could have given them the opportunity to sort of not work with us anymore, go focus on their academics. You know, they had to make all their transition to Zoom and all their things for online learning. So did they want to focus on strictly their academics? And we would kind of give them a pass for the rest of the semester. But enthusiastically, they all were like, no, we still want to keep working. This is what we love to do. This is the work that really makes our connection to the university something special and something that they look forward to. So we were like, all right, great. Like, here we go. We got plenty of work to be doing. So one of the first things that we did was we created a page that we called miami.edu/stay connected, which was a collection of all of the virtual services, programs, resources across the entire campus that students could connect with. So we kind of used our student team to go out and find what all these resources were. They helped us design all the graphics that you'll see on that page and all that. So that was kind of the first work that they got to do. And what we also now are using this as an opportunity for is some of their professional development pieces, where we really love to look at our job and our work and our team as not only an execution where all they do is churn out, you know, projects, posters, designs, written stories all day long, but that they're also growing and developing. So one of the things that we've had them do is sort of go to these sites like LinkedIn Learning or lynda.com, look at, you know, Adobe resources, look at all these different other webinars and other tools, and they're all assigned basically every week in addition to their regular workflow. They go out and they find something that they're interested in, something that they don't know anything about or terms that they've heard and they want to know what they are. And then we meet once a week as our staff and they get to share and they get to talk amongst each other. And so where our, you know, our all team meetings maybe in the past would last 20, 30 minutes, do a whip around about what projects you're working on. They're now an hour plus of just our student team kind of getting to talk with each other, communicate with each other, see each other, and teach each other all at the same time, and teach us as pro staff things that we, you know, aren't familiar with, or new skills and new ideas. So they've really loved that, and they're actually asking that we keep doing that even when we get back into the office and then whatever we're back to our on-campus operation. How do we continue this? Because they really love to sort of show off the new things that they've learned, things that we could be doing. So for me, I look forward to that at the end of every week when we check in with them and just kind of see them sort of light up and talk about things that they're interested in. And it's not strictly about projects that they're working on anymore.
Thanks, Mike. I can't tell if Megan's going to unmute or not. No, okay. All right. I'd be remiss if we don't talk about fall. I think there's a lot of folks who are on the call that are like, what the heck are we doing with fall? How are we marketing it? Are we sending out mailers? Are we moving to virtual marketing for what fall looks like? What are your approaches? Are you moving to electronic marketing for that? Are there messages you feel comfortable sending out at this time? Anywhere on the horizon you are with this topic, we'd love to hear it.
So what we're doing at Miami, so specifically enrollment management, admission, they're under a separate division. So they are kind of still continuing with whatever process they're doing. I don't want to speak too much about it and misspeak about whatever their efforts are. We do have our deposit deadline is May 1st, so that is quickly on the horizon for us. But what we're doing, in student affairs is we are looking at, of course, the fall programming model. And so for us, we are welcome week, a traditional 1 week orientation prior to the start of classes. So we're looking at it as, thankfully, that means our summer, we don't have to really make any decisions about some of that. We do have some summer camps and conferences and all that are being looked at, but from a fall class perspective, we know at least our deadline, for that is later in August. But obviously parents and families are asking. And so what we're trying to say to them is be as upfront and honest as we can and say, we're working our hardest to try to think about all the different options that we have, but we simply don't know. And I know some folks have asked that question as well of how do you answer questions when you don't know the answer? And that's what we have to say right now. And I think we have to be comfortable, saying that what we know and what we don't know and kind of being in that space. So I wish I had a more concrete answer about what we're doing, but it really is looking at programming, looking at what our options are. I know there's a variety of different schools that have put out different models and different thought processes. Miami is exploring some of our different options as well. But it's really for us trying to keep those folks, be as transparent, like Megan had said, be as honest as we can be about what we do know, what we don't know, and things that are in our control and things, of course, that are not in our control. So really it is just trying to make sure that students are aware of what the deadlines are, what things we have not changed. I mean, like I said, our deposit date is still May 1st. So if you're looking to be a University of Miami student, that's still your deadline. So we want to make sure that people are aware that some things are still moving forward. Some things are still on a bit of a normal timeline. And just kind of, again, being as transparent as we can. But we know that our clock is certainly ticking, and we're definitely gonna have to let folks know, people are looking at airlines and hotels and plans they need to start making for August. So we know that those decisions are gonna be coming soon. But it's certainly just right now, we are kind of in a wait and see mode, but it's, again, being as transparent as we can be about what we do know, what we don't know.
Thanks, Mike. I would say we certainly have a number of questions in terms of, messaging for fall housing types, engaging our students who are already campus members on if they want to contract again for the next year. So, I mean, obviously a topic where, even as you said, you didn't necessarily have all the answers. We don't have all the answers on this. It is ambiguous. Paul or Meg, did you have any additional items you wish to chime in on there?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is we are similar to Mike. We're moving forward as we are planning on being on campus, and that we're going to be welcoming our next class to campus in August. However, we, again, during all of our different opportunities to share with students, we're just saying, like, right now, this is where we're at, and we will let you know as soon as possible if that is going to not be the case. I meet daily with our enrollment management team to talk about the different high yield programs that we have in student life. So housing is one of those. We're talking a lot about a program that comes out of one of our student engagement offices, Ignite, that's a leadership program for students, sorority and fraternity life, some of those different programs that would incline a student to actually come and make it to campus in the fall, because we're really worried about not only just messaging in general, but we're worried about occupancy, obviously, from a housing perspective, but from a university-wide perspective, we're also worried about just, melt and wanting to make sure that we're mitigating that as much as possible. So we're putting together a comprehensive communications plan that's in partnership with student life, enrollment management, and student success to make sure that these students are getting a lot of touch points. They feel like they know campus and have an idea of the experience that they're going to have, even though they're going to be doing a virtual orientation. And a big player in that is going to be university housing. We are supposed to be having our returning student room selection was back in February. And we're supposed to be having our freshman student room selection in May. And so right now we're putting together the materials for what that is going to look like, because it's going to look just a little bit different, because we also are going to have a lot of students in our system that are signing up for move out times or checkout times again. So we're troubleshooting that right now of how best to do that so that students don't experience any kind of lag times when they're logging into the system. We're trying to make sure that we're very cognizant of that user experience for them. So we're just trying to, I guess, weigh the pros and cons and awaiting some decisions from our policy group. But basically what has been really useful for us is just move forward, go with what you have planned. If you wait and if you hesitate, you don't communicate anything, it's going to look like you're hiding something. You don't want to do that. So just be very, I think, transparent, but also making sure. A big conversation I had today was, I don't want to put out a message that confirms, hey, room selection starts May 8th, and then hear from our policy group that actually, no, we need to push it back to May 18th or, whatever date. It's going to look like we don't know what we're doing and that we're not organized. And that's also something that's really important. And so I've put that question back out to the policy group, and I've put it to our enrollment management of saying like, hey, yes, room selection needs to happen. This is a really important process, but let's make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row before we start communicating again. And in the meantime, we can say like, hey, like, we're working on it. You're going to be able to pick your room. We're so excited that you're coming to the University of Tennessee, and we're going to be in touch soon with some details about that. So that's kind of how we're managing fall. I am working with a lot of the different departments within student life to be able to increase their print communications so that everyone loves getting a present in the mail. So, being able to increase the amount of communication that we're doing that way, but of course in a way that is not overwhelming and that we're not oversaturating anything, but more that it's a pleasant surprise and a reminder that there's good times ahead and that we're really excited for these students. And so that's been that's the vibe, that's the message, that's what we're continually leaning back on, and it served us really well. So that's kind of how we're taking it here at UT.
Thanks, Meg.
There's a question that I saw come through, and speaking specifically about virtual marketing efforts for fall, and I want to touch on something Megan mentioned too about the balance between print and digital. So for some of our materials, we are keeping them as print because they are that feel-good piece. We know that they're going to arrive at mailboxes, and nowadays people actually like getting mail, which is different than it was in the past. But we're also being very intentional in thinking about if things are going to print that have dates on them, that have things that are very specific to certain time elements that may or may not be the case. Those things we've decided to make more virtual. So things like we would produce a move-in booklet that would be mailed to all incoming freshmen that tells them what their date to move in is, where they need to park, all of those things. We're probably going to have to do that digital because we won't have clear answers until well past our print and mail deadline to be useful for these students. So how do we now create it was a 16-page, full color, fully designed, helpful booklet that had tear out sheets and all these wonderful things. How do we turn that into, at the basic level, an email? How do we make that something that is just as engaging and just as informative, knowing that we're going to have to make it digital because we just simply won't have clear answers with enough time to make updates, go to design, go to print, things like that. So that's definitely something that we're looking at, changing things to virtual, to an online digital format. But again, as Megan mentioned, trying to keep some things that can be print that have worked well for us as print in the past, keeping those things, making sure that students are getting their hands on them.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, same. I mean, our friends at orientation have already flipped to virtual websites. They're creating like a website. They're essentially turning all of the things that would be in their like physical backpack into a PDF library, which is not great from an accessibility standpoint, but I will let it slide. It's fine. Then the other thing that's happening is our Truber and Welcome Week stakeholders will start meeting on May 8th. We will discuss what a virtual experience looks like. We currently have a website that is reasonably well trafficked, but I imagine that the experience will have to be very different on that site. Currently, it is simply just a marketing copy and then a list of events. It will most likely need to be more than that. So we'll know more answers by the end of the academic year.
Great. Oh, Mike.
Oh, I actually have a question for our panelists and anybody else that wants to answer.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in this, with thinking about this, have you all been reaching out to your campus partners to try to not push them to make decisions, but to kind of let them know that, hey, what we've done in the past may or may not be possible due to different timelines, different, just because you make the decision, we still need, if you still want that book, we need to know 6 to 8 weeks in advance. And so if that decision can't be made 6 to 8 weeks in advance, we have to think of a plan B. And if you've done that, what has the response been from those campus partners?
So if you've got an answer to respond to that question from Mike, if you want to just raise your hand and we'd have you speak live on the broadcast. Certainly that's a good thing, a good reminder for us to continue to think about how we're being proactive in that, working with our campus partners. Question I had for the group, really kind of rapid fire question. When it comes to social media, we're hearing a lot from parents, maybe phone calls, emails, but really we're student-centered in our work on university campuses. What have you found to be the best social media strategies or the best social media platforms that are engaging with students now?
I'll jump in because I've definitely seen from a few folks here, from Rochelle, hi Rochelle, and from Julie, hi Julie, and from anonymous attendee, hi anonymous, about what social is going to be. So I'm going to answer those live. So I will speak on behalf of my colleagues at UCLA Housing social media team, Ricky Horn and Terry Gang, on how they're approaching their change in communications messaging. So as the COVID-19 situation was emerging for us, there was a decided change in tone in how we were utilizing all of our platforms. So our current stack is going to be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, big three. Then we have a YouTube channel for videos, which for all intents and purposes, I'll consider a social platform. And we added a fifth one to the stack.
TikTok.
And it's TikTok, yes. So this was a nice opportune time, I think, to launch a presence like that. The university had only launched their centralized TikTok, I want to say like a couple months ago. Our Vice Chancellor of Strategic Communications is a big proponent of TikTok. So that social media team is spending a good amount of energy on that. So it's been interesting to figure out how to utilize that platform. So the TikTok was launched to pair up with all of it, but messaging across all of it was definitely more like, because they're pretty like, they keep it pretty young and fresh for everybody, like on a student level. But then the messaging definitely had to flip to be more authentic, right? You're serving more audiences. These are students who are scared. They're scared, right? They're unsure. They are anxious already about everything in their academic career. And now there's this huge thing that will be impactful on, honestly, like an entire generation of people, right? So there was a change in tone there and a change in programming as well. So the way that Instagram stories is utilized, for example, is that there is a daily theme for each day now. So it's going to be What's Brewing Wednesdays, TikTok Thursdays, there's to cover different programming buckets, and then you deliver a different set of content each day. The Instagram feed is more or less similar. We have an archive of photography, and then we write messaging similar to that. And instead of being like, it's so great to be on campus, it's just like, we miss campus and we love you. On Twitter, the memes of the moment, finding a way to reference student life in a way, like definitely lots of tweets about Zoom, lots of tweets about the things you miss. There was one good tweet in there, just kind of like, sometimes I look into a mirror and I say, can I ask you a question just to feel something? Because we all miss getting flyered on Bruin Walk, Then Facebook, honestly, the things that have performed really well on there have been Wallpaper Wednesdays, in which we have a design staff student illustrate something, it's usually in Procreate on an iPad to kind of trace over a photograph and make an illustration of campus or Westwood. So those perform well on Wednesdays. And then to kind of put their toes into the meme waters a little bit, sometimes with like the right like meme in Facebook, it works really well. And and that makes sense because a lot of the things that I sync up with are very on Facebook, are meme groups. Yeah, and so that's kind of the step, and that's what we've changed. But it's a nice time for social to shine for students, and we've experienced that bump in traffic that we always get around this time of year, but I would say it's not because of COVID, it's because of perspectives. It's because of people who just got in. So then when we see that bump in a follower base and the higher engagement, it's because while we're trying to serve students right now, we are also still playing the game of, putting on a show for people who are deciding whether or not they want to go to this school. So that's kind of what complicates things a little bit. And I've been mentioned in whatever meetings I happen to be in, just kind of like, just be mindful of that you're serving future Bruins as well. That's it.
Thanks, Paul. That was a lot of fun content. Charisse, I believe you raised your hand. I didn't know if you had something you wanted to add to the conversation. Okay. Sorry, Charisse, if you're there, just need to have you on mute. And if not, I totally understand. As we move toward closing our conversation for the day, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to share their kind of parting thoughts with us. But before we jump into that, a few items I wanted to point out for the group. We have a number of these virtual roundtables on our upcoming schedule. This is actually the first of five business days in a row of virtual roundtable content. So take a look at that, what's in the upcoming schedule. And as always, I highly recommend that you, again, take a look at our ACUHO online resources and keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed topics in this virtual roundtable, create a thread on your online community and help keep that conversation going. There's certainly questions here that people are going to want to keep discussing. So I throw it to our panelists as we wrap up, as we part, if you could just share your parting thoughts with the group. So this can be anything: life, fun, work, lessons learned, things you'll change in the future. Totally up to you. It's potpourri.
So I would end by looking ahead towards the future, but not as much as in what to do for fall and what marketing things and all that, but to really think about the lessons that we can take away from this, that we can carry forward into the rest of this COVID-19 response, but also even after it's over, whatever that may mean. And think about what things have worked and what things have been some surprising. I mean, I think you've heard from most of us about new partnerships or new collaborations or finding ways to bring different departments together that historically may not have worked together and really continue those. I mean, for us, one thing that I could think of is our study abroad office is not under our division, but has become very closely aligned with our division. And I hope that partnership continues. Same thing on our enrollment management. Again, different division, but has now become closely partnered with us. A better relationship than we ever have with university communications. So sometimes out of some of these crises and some of these emergency situations, you wind up working together with people, breaking down different organizational hierarchies and some silos in a university that may historically exist, and to really think about how we can build on those moving forward. How can we continue some of those conversations? How can we continue some of those collaborations, some of those, having people read your messages and reading your emails that maybe you would have just historically typed out, read once or twice and hit send because it sounded good, having other folks read it for their perspective and their lenses. So things like that I kind of think about, that when all this is over and done with, I'll certainly be reflecting back on and taking some good lessons, some good new best practices that we can carry forward. Again, whether you're in crisis mode or not, I think there's some really good lessons and some really good practices that we've been forced to implement, but at sometimes that necessity becomes some great mother of invention for some new ways of doing our work moving forward.
Megan, you go. No? Okay. All right, got it. Okay, well then, my last parting thought. All right, hot take. If you want to know a nice microcosm of how a housing and residential life bifurcated system works, and you want to be part of one of the biggest cultural phenomena that's currently happening right now during our work from home crisis, I need y'all to get on Animal Crossing, okay? I need y'all to get a Switch. I need you to get Animal Crossing New Horizons. And honestly, in terms of just my own mental health, like it's been like the most helpful thing. I am not a gamer. My partner is, but I have found a lot of just comfort in that. And all the thought pieces on it are really great. And in terms of the way that that particular game builds community, I think is worth revisiting for all the work that we do here in building a housing community. Like, so yeah, I need you to meet that crazy robber baron capitalist Tom Nook on Animal Crossing New Horizons. And yeah, and then I'll put my email in the chat and then we'll be friends and you can visit my island. There you go.
That's hard to follow. I just want to share with everyone, love those around you. Please take care of yourselves, take care of your teams, put people first, the best that you can. There's a reason why you were in your role, you were chosen for your role. Lean into that and have confidence in this very uncertain time. We're leaning on you to be able to help lead the way. And so thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing for your students. If you haven't been told today, you're doing a great job. You're rocking it. And I hope that you have people around you that are your support and that you're rocks, that you have your people that you can lean on. Those folks are so important. So take some time for yourself, love on your pets, your kids, your family, your friends, however is the safest way to do that, and be well.
I can't beat any of that. Great messages, and you've also inspired me to go get a Nintendo Switch. So I'm a Xbox One guy, and there's no Animal Crossing there. Bummer. Co-facilitators, thank you so much for your time and energy today. Love the content, love the conversation. You've all got a lot of great information to share. I know you've been putting that in the chat, your contact information. We will also try to tie in your contact information with our post-event messaging that goes out to attendees. And I encourage all of you, go on the online community, create some threads on these resources that we're seeing online. Let's help each other out through sharing of resources. So thank you again. I hope to see you on a virtual roundtable again in the near future. Bye, everyone.